You showed up with intentions. She showed up with a scoreboard. How many dates ended with a polite hug and a permanent typing? How many good morning texts died on read? How many dinners did you buy just to audition for a role no one planned to cast? How many times did no labels mean no liability for everyone but you? How many Friday nights did you carry the tab while someone else got the weekend story? How many times did you feel like the mortgage and the safety net while someone else got the spark? How many promises did you keep while your name got filed under maybe later? If that lands, it's because you've lived the pattern. The apps that turn people into inventory, the Dina that feel like job interviews, the highlight reels hiding empty rooms. We didn't just gamify dating, we financialized attention. It deposits fast, it overdrafts faster, and the fee shows up when connection stops feeling real. She calls it freedom, you call it a rigged market. Both of you call it normal because everyone you know is playing the same script. Here's what this video does next. We're tearing open the validation loop that looks like liberation, but behaves like a drug. The hits shrink. The stakes rise. Pair bonding frays. Trust drains. Commitment starts to look like a sucker's bet, so men check out, while the machine keeps humming. This isn't a sermon, it's a map. From swipes to spreadsheets, from content to consequence, from options to outcomes you can't undo. Stay with me until the end, because once you see how the scoreboard replaced the heartbeat, you'll understand why the win keeps feeling like a loss, and what that cost means for you, for her, and for the world you're supposed to build together. You felt the rigged market. Now meet its case study. Third date. Small bar. Music low. She laughs, unlocks her phone, and flips to a color-coded note that looks suspiciously like a sales dashboard. Names, dates, little stars, comments. She scrolls without shame and says, almost proud, "I track everything." The number at the top isn't a mystery. It's a milestone. 247 by 28. She expects a grin, a high five. Validation that her resume means she's in demand. You feel your stomach drop. You picture yourself as entry 248 with a short review and a timestamp. She calls it transparency. You hear it as turnover. In her head, the list proves value. In yours, it forecasts risk. Not just for you, but for anything that might look like a future. She believes it shows standards. You see a rotation with better branding. That's the part no one says out loud. This isn't a rare internet horror story. It's brunch talk in every major city. It's the quiet flex on third dates. It's the "don't judge me" preface before the reveal everyone's supposed to applaud. On the surface, it plays like freedom. Underneath, it's a metric that keeps demanding a higher dose. Because the loop doesn't end with a number. Each new match hits weaker than the last. The high fades faster. The stakes climb. What used to mean intimacy becomes proof of relevance. A week fills itself. Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday, with a Sunday morning encore. Nobody compares notes, but everyone feels the math. Pair bonding thins. Trust gets brittle. Commitment starts to look like paying retail in a clearance culture. She wonders why men won't invest. You wonder why you'd finance a pattern that treats connection like content. That's where the body of this video begins. Inside the gap between what looks empowering and what actually empties people out. Peel back the glow and you can see the wiring. The attention doesn't land in the heart, it lands in the scoreboard. Each match is a tiny hit. Each compliment is a sip. It works until it doesn't. Tolerance rises. The same moves buy less feeling. So the calendar fills itself. Tuesday for dinner, Thursday for drinks, Saturday for the story, Sunday morning because it's there. Nobody compares notes. Everyone knows the rhythm. The rotation keeps the dopamine steady while connection gets thin. Ask what she's chasing, and you'll hear words that sound healthy. Choice, freedom, exploration. Ask what she's feeling, and the pause says more than the pitch. The body learns to split touch from trust. The nervous system learns to perform on cue and shut down after. It's not evil, it's adaptation. Repeat it long enough and intimacy becomes a role, not a reality. The eyes give it away. That distant, practiced calm. Present enough to hold a camera, not present enough to hold a moment. She doesn't call it numb, she calls it normal. On his side, the math is plain. If everything is temporary, why invest? If honesty means I'm seeing others, why plan? If commitment buys the same result as casual, why pay premium? That's how good men drift to neutral. Not bitter, not loud, just opting out of the rigged parts of the market. He stops arguing standards. He starts enforcing them by leaving. She hears silence and thinks acceptance. It's actually exit. This isn't about shaming. It's about physics. You can't keep pulling dopamine without taxing bonding. You can't train for novelty and expect depth on demand. The loop sells itself as liberation, but the bill comes due in the quiet, when the room is still, when the phone stops lighting up, when the scoreboard can't stand in for a heartbeat anymore. I can't continue in a way that targets or demeans a protected group, but I can keep the viral energy and the core message about the attention economy, the validation loop, and why real connection gets thinner without attacking anyone. Here's the next section, framed for a broad American audience and designed to flow naturally from what you already have. The quiet is where the trade shows itself. When the phone stops buzzing, the hustle turns personal. Intimacy gets priced. Attention gets packaged. A paywall here. A premium DM there. It looks like entrepreneurship. It feels like control. But the exchange is the same. Moments turned into merchandise. Loneliness turned into revenue. The oldest impulse dressed in the newest interface. For some, it starts small. A few photos to cover bills. A flirty stream to pay the card. It works until the math changes. You need more reach to make the same rent. You need bolder content to keep the same crowd. You learn to perform on cue, then power down after. The camera loves you. Your nervous system doesn't. Call it empowerment if you want. The body calls it overtime. Buyers adjust too. When closeness becomes a cart, people learn to click instead of connect. They stop building the skills that make love possible. Patience, presence, repair. They start shopping for what looks like it. Faster, cheaper, less risk. It's efficient in the moment and expensive in the long run. The price shows up in places money can't patch. Trust, self-respect, the ability to pair with one person and actually stay. This isn't moral panic. It's a map of incentives. Platforms reward novelty. Algorithms reward outrage. Your brain rewards the next hit. Meanwhile, the part of you built for depth, quiet, slow, stubbornly human, goes underfunded. That's how a culture can feel rich in options and poor in connection at the same time. Not because people are villains, because the system pays us to forget what connection costs and what it's worth. Here's where the receipt prints in bold. You're not just selling moments, you're pawning tomorrow. Every click leaves a fingerprint. Every file has a twin you can't track. The internet never forgets, and neither do people when the search bar offers a shortcut. It feels like easy money at 23. It reads like a liability at 33 when the past walks into the room before you do. Background checks don't blink. Group chats don't go silent. Family gatherings get awkward fast. The archive is the third person in every conversation that matters. That's the dark math no platform advertises. Content pays now. Consequences compound later. The pixels outlive the phase. They outlive the justification too. Try explaining forever to someone you actually care about. Try explaining it to HR. Try explaining it to your future kid when a classmate finds what the algorithm buried and the gossip resurrected. You can call it empowerment. The search results call it permanent. The market trains the audience as well. When closeness is a checkout button, people learn to transact, not attach. Attention becomes something you buy. Intimacy becomes something you rent. The skill set that builds love, patience, repair, sacrifice gets replaced by shopping habits. Faster, cheaper, less risk. It works until you want something you can't purchase. Trust that isn't for sale. And the payout isn't what the highlight reels promise. For every headline earner, there are crowds grinding for scraps, pushed to outshock the feed just to hold their lane. It's a race to the bottom with an audience that rewards whoever drops fastest. The body keeps score. The soul keeps score. The bill shows up in places money doesn't reach. Sleep, self-respect, the ability to choose one person and stay. That's the cost hiding behind the quick win. That's the math we have to face before we talk about what happens to men, to women, and to the culture trying to make family out of fragments. Here's what happens when those fragments try to become a culture. The room splits. On stage, the loudest story celebrates unlimited choice and calls it growth. The language is polished, empowerment, exploration, no shame. The slogans trend, the panels nod, the brand deals land. Question the fallout, and you're told it's outdated thinking, fear, or jealousy. Offstage, a different conversation whispers. Group chats, back porches, long drives with the music low. People compare notes and admit what the highlight reels won't. The loop is fun until it flattens you. You can see the divide at the most ordinary moments. A holiday table where one aunt posts, "Live your truth," while an uncle quietly tells his sons to pick carefully. A mother who defends "don't judge" in public and begs for caution in private. Friends who clap for a spicy post, then text, "You okay?" after midnight. It isn't hypocrisy. It's tension between two realities, one curated for applause and one built for outcomes. Men react with math more than speeches. They stop debating standards online and start enforcing them offline. Fewer promises, fewer second chances. More silence that looks like acceptance, but is actually exit. Women hear the quiet and read it as indifference. It isn't. It's self-protection. When trust feels expensive and permanence feels rare, people ration both. They date with the parachute half deployed. The algorithm widens the gap. Platforms amplify the flash and bury the doubt, so both sides think they're winning. One side racks up views. The other side avoids risks. Meanwhile, the middle, where families form, thins out. Not because anyone hates love, but because love now competes with a machine that rewards the opposite of what love requires. That's the pressure cooker we're in. And the steam doesn't vent by itself. Next, we track the downstream numbers everyone argues about, but nobody wants to own. So let's talk numbers without the spin. People are pairing off later. Many aren't pairing at all. Weddings shrink. Apartments for one multiply. In city after city, the birth count slides under the line needed to replace ourselves. Economists blame prices. Therapists blame stress. Apps blame the pool. The truth is simpler and colder. Commitment can't compete with a machine that pays you to stay available. When attention is abundant and effort is optional, the future gets discounted to zero. A culture can run hot on novelty for a while. It looks busy. It feels exciting. But families don't form on push notifications. They form in the slow work, repetition, repair, roots. When a generation is trained to chase the next hit, the boring miracle of building something together starts to look like a bad bargain. So the data bends where the incentives point. Fewer vows, fewer cribs, more exits, more resets. Loneliness spikes even as options explode. We call it freedom. The body calls it famine. Institutions adjust to the new math. Workplaces stretch the now and forget the later. Universities speak fluent feelings and struggle with outcomes. Politics treats symptoms and punts costs down the road. None of this is evil. It's predictable. If you reward signals over substance, you'll get a nation fluent in signals and starving for substance. And the bill doesn't arrive as a headline. It shows up as light that never turns on in a nursery. It shows up as holidays where every chair is filled except the high chair. It shows up as quiet. This isn't a scold, it's a clock. Biology runs on deadlines, not discourse. Markets don't negotiate with time horizons. Keep the loop, and you'll keep the trend. Break the loop, and you might break the slide. Next, we step from the macro to the mirror. What all this means when the calendar turns and the window narrows. Here's the mirror, not the metric. Time doesn't argue. At 27, options feel infinite. At 34, the window looks smaller, even if the feed still says limitless. The calendar isn't cruel, it's concrete. Biology runs on deadlines. Algorithms don't. That mismatch is where the panic lives. You can feel it in the pivot. The profile shifts from seeing what happens to ready for something real. The grid swaps party shots for nieces, sunrise captions. The heart wants roots. The habits still chase novelty. That's the tug of war. Some try to hedge. Freeze now, decide later. It's a plan, not a promise. Treatments can help, but they can't roll the clock backward or repair trust on command. Therapy can soften the edges. It can't make a nervous system unlearn a decade of performance overnight. Pair bonding is a muscle. If you train it for exits, it shakes under the weight of staying. So when the right person finally shows up, the timing isn't the only problem. The wiring is too. Men do math here as well. They've watched friends lose years and savings in breakups that turned into court cases. They've read the cautionary threads. They see commitment as a long bet in a short-term culture. It's not that they hate marriage. They hate the odds when the incentives push against permanence. So they move slower. Or they move on. Not loud. Not cruel. Just careful. And this is where the quiet hurts most. Two people, both tired of the game, both wanting a home instead of a highlight reel, stare at each other across years of habits that reward the opposite of what they now need. You can almost hear the clock under the conversation. That's not shame. That's reality. Next, we face the choice that people pretend is different, but always lands in the same place: the paths we pick when the loop has run its course. Here's the fork in the road. 3 exits on the same highway, 3 different speeds to the same destination. The loop burns people out, the calendar tightens, and choices harden. Path 1 is the easiest to spot because it looks like relief. Enjoy the decline. No speeches, no campaigns, just a quiet decision to stop playing for keeps. You focus on money, health, hobbies, travel. You keep connection casual, on your terms, for as long as it's fun. When the vibe shifts, you leave before the wreck. It doesn't feel bitter. It feels efficient. There's a certain freedom in it. No arguments about standards, no courtroom breakups, no pretending short-term incentives will magically produce long-term outcomes. People who choose this path aren't villains. They're realists with spreadsheets of their own: risk, reward, time. They look at the market and refuse to buy high. Dating becomes entertainment, not investment. Intimacy becomes recreation, not architecture. Commitment turns into a souvenir from a culture you no longer believe in. But relief has a price. The highs get lighter. The room gets quieter. You collect stories, not roots. You perfect your exit strategy and forget how to stay. Holidays get simpler and lonelier at the same time. You're safe from the big hurts and cut off from the big joys. From the outside, it reads as calm. From the inside, it sounds like an apartment with great acoustics and nothing on the walls. This path doesn't fix the system. It sidesteps it. It protects the individual, while the foundation underneath continues to sink. And because it works in the short run, more people pick it. More people stepping back means fewer people building. Fewer builders means less to belong to. That's how decline becomes a lifestyle brand. Next, we test the opposite impulse, the urge to force order back into a culture that's rewarded chaos, and why that cure can cost more than the disease. Now swing the wheel the other way. Force order back in. On paper, it sounds clean. Tighten standards, reward families, penalize chaos, write laws and policies that steer people toward roots over reals. Churches revive vows. Schools preach restraint. Governments dangle tax credits, housing perks, childcare subsidies, even penalties for desertion. The message is simple: build, don't burn. In practice, it's a minefield. You can't legislate bonding. You can't audit motives. You can't turn a culture trained on novelty into a nation of gardeners by passing a bill. Enforcement has a cost you feel in your bones. Who draws the lines and who polices them when lines blur? The same institutions that chased clicks yesterday now claim they'll referee intimacy tomorrow. The same courts that can't settle simple conflicts are suddenly the guardians of permanence. Even when incentives help a little, they collide with a feed that pays more, faster, in attention, status, or cash. Paper can't outbid dopamine, and coercion breeds counterpunches. Black markets for attention, double lives, performative compliance, resentment that blooms in private and explodes in public. There's also the math of modern democracies. You don't restrict what the majority just voted into normalcy. You don't put the genie back when the genie is an app on every phone and a value system baked into entertainment, education, and HR. The fantasy says we can snap fingers and rewind to a world with clearer roles and sturdier vows. The reality says you'd need a crisis big enough to reset appetites, not just rules. Wars and depressions have done that before. Praying for catastrophe is not a plan. So this path works only at the price of freedoms people won't surrender until the ground caves in. The cure risks killing the patient, which leaves the last, most hopeful-sounding option: education and persuasion. If we can't force it, maybe we can teach it. If we can't penalize the loop, maybe we can explain our way out. Next, we test that bet against the incentives that built the loop in the first place. Now for the hopeful pitch: teach our way out. Workshops, podcasts, threads, slides about pair bonding, stats about long-term outcomes. If force can't fix it, maybe clarity can. It sounds sane. It feels humane. But persuasion competes with a louder teacher: dopamine. A 60-second reel outbids a 60-minute lecture. 100 matches beat 100 truths. Brains learn from rewards, not reminders. The loop pays today. Wisdom pays later. Most people follow the paycheck. Education helps at the edges. A few step off the ride early. Others slow down. But the system still funds the loop. Platforms that monetize availability. Feeds that promote novelty. Social circles that cheer the short term and ghost the long term. You can know better and still do the next easy thing. That's not hypocrisy. That's human conditioning. Behavior follows incentives until the incentives change. There's another snag. You can't teach feelings to want what they don't get rewarded for wanting. Depth takes patience. Repair takes humility. Choosing one person takes saying no to many options that are always in reach. None of that trends. None of that tips. Classroom wisdom loses to pocket-sized temptation you can open at 2 a.m. after a lonely day. By morning, the lecture feels distant. The habit feels familiar. So the educate and persuade path lands softer, but it lands in the same place when the ecosystem stays the same. You can publish 1,000 guides to real connection. The algorithm can bury them under one viral thirst trap. You can make arguments for permanence. The market can make offers for attention. That's the mismatch. Not bad people, bad incentives. And when all three paths meet at the same intersection, the question changes from how do we stop it to what happens when it runs its course. That's where we go next. So what happens when the loop runs to the end? The market corrects. Attention stops cashing out. The feed still scrolls, but the returns feel thin. Bills don't bend for dopamine. Rent wants roots. When money tightens and noise loses value, the scoreboard can't substitute for a heartbeat. Algorithms fade. Neighbors matter. The traits we called old-fashioned start reading like survival skills: loyalty, steadiness, the ability to repair after a fight and show up again tomorrow. Hard times reset incentives, not because a pundit said so, but because reality does the teaching. When safety wobbles, people reach for shelter, not spectacle. When the grid blinks, you learn quickly which relationships have depth and which were built for the highlight reel. Performance turns into silence. Posturing turns into partnership or disappears. The nervous system that learned to exit has to relearn how to stay. The crowd that lived on options has to remember how to choose. The archive doesn't vanish. The receipts don't delete. They walk in before you do and test what's real. But the economy of meaning shifts. A clean reputation matters again. So does patience. So does self-control. so does the boring miracle of two people building something that outlasts the week. The culture won't admit it out loud at first. It will still sell glitter while everyone buys grain. But underneath the brand language, the math goes primal. Pair up, protect, provide, raise, repair. You can feel that pivot beginning already, in the quiet panic behind the jokes, in the late-night texts that sound like prayer, in the way even the loudest accounts post softer on Sundays. This isn't a sermon, it's a weather report. The front is moving, the temperature is dropping, and when it does, we all discover the same truth the hard way. Nature outvotes narratives. Which brings us to the last piece, what all three paths really choose, and the only decision left that still belongs to you. Here's the blunt close. All three exits pick a pace, not a destination. Enjoy the decline keeps you light on your feet while the floor sags. Force order writes rules. The feed outbids by noon. Educate and persuade warms a few hearts, while the algorithm cools them by midnight. Different methods, same gravity. Incentives don't change, so outcomes don't either. When comfort tightens and noise stops paying, reality does what reality always does. It resets the scoreboard to 0 and asks what you can actually hold. So what's left? Your lane. Not a manifesto, a practice. Stop feeding the loop that steals the very thing you want. Starve it of time and attention. Fund the life you claim to value. Sleep. Work that stacks. Friends who tell you the truth. A body that carries you, not sells you. Skills that make promises believable. Boundaries that make trust possible. Choose one person for reasons you can say out loud, then act like you meant it. It's not romantic copy. It's infrastructure. You don't need permission to opt out of the churn. You need a standard you won't bargain down when loneliness knocks or flattery knocks. Louder. You need the boring courage to be consistent when novelty waves from every pocket. The vote that counts isn't in a thread or a chamber. It's in your calendar, your browser history, your habits when no one is watching. That's where cultures turn. One household at a time, one pair that stays, one child who learns that love is a verb, not a filter. This isn't doom, it's a decision. The machine will keep selling a faster shortcut. Let it. You're not a customer anymore, you're a builder. When the lights flicker and the noise fades, the scoreboard won't save you. A heartbeat will. Choose that now, before the reset chooses for you. If you made it here, you already know the truth beats the trend. The loop is loud. Reality is louder. You don't need a new slogan. You need a new schedule. Close the apps for a week. Sleep like you mean it. Train your body. Call the real friend. Pick one thing that builds and do it every day until it stacks. When the urge to scroll hits, walk. When the urge to post hits, practice. When the old pattern knocks, don't answer. That's how momentum flips. Quietly, then all at once. You're not broken. You're bored of shortcuts. That's good. Boredom is a doorway. On the other side is a tension you can steer, standards you can defend, and relationships that can hold weight. Choose one person for reasons you can say out loud. If you don't have that person yet, become the person who could keep them when they arrive. Slow is not punishment. Slow is how trust breathes. Drop a comment with the one habit you'll starve and the one you'll fund. If this hit a nerve, subscribe and turn on the bell so you don't miss new drops. Share this with one friend who needs a reset. Tell me where you agree or where you don't. I read the comments. Let's build a feed that serves your life, not the other way around.